Hello, everyone. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who has been watching the show. I would also like to extend my gratitude for all of those who have been leaving comments. If you do watch the show and enjoy the episode, it would really mean a lot if you could leave a comment of support. Don't forget to share the episode with those that you know, and also episodes in the future, and to like the episodes and to follow the Founders College Instagram page at Founders College. I would like to share this series with as many people as possible because the people that we have on the show truly have such inspirational and unique stories. The series truly highlights the very best in our Founders College community. Please stay tuned for more amazing episodes, and thank you so much for your support. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is another episode of Faces of Founders. Today we have Professor Pablo Idahosa, who you probably know. He's actually the college head at Founders College. Thank you so much for coming, Pablo.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Catherine. It really is a pleasure. I'm really happy that you're doing this. I think it's an important initiative to profile the face and fellows of the college. It really does bring a texture to what the college is. And I think especially now, given the current period of people being invisible because of COVID.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the compliments. I've been having a blast doing it. It's so much fun. So I'm very happy to be moving forward with this in the new year. So very happy to see where this will go in the future as well. So first off, my question is tell us about the program that you teach in and how long have you been teaching at our university for?
Well, I teach in two programs in the Department of Social Science. One is African Studies, and the other is International Development Studies. And African Studies should be straightforward enough. It's about the study of Africa. It's an interdisciplinary program that looks at Africa and its diasporas through the lens of a number of different ways of approaching disciplines, everything from politics to history to economics, anthropology. So it's a bit of everything.
Wow.
And what we do in the program is to frame Africa differently and historically and culturally than I think most people understand it. Development studies is about the study of the ways in which societies in the global north and their polities seek to enhance the well-being of their population through the various kinds of policies of really economic improvement, how they utilize their economies to best enable their populations. It's really a program that's fundamentally about political economy, but through a historical lens that also combines, once again, issues around culture, amongst other things. I've been teaching at York for 24 years, so I've been doing
Wow.
this for a long time.
That's amazing.
Yes, that's yeah.
Good job.
And well, it affords you a perspective upon the changes that the university and the college in particular have undergone
Yeah.
over that period of time. Not just the university, but also the students. The interested students have changing ways in which students and faculty understand things, the character of the different programs that have come in since I've been at the university and so on. So it has afforded me an opportunity to both see the intergenerations, as it were, of the different people at York, staff, faculty, students, of course, but also all the other people who work at the university that many people don't see as well. And this is especially true of the college as well.
Thank you so much for your service. Yeah, that's a very lots of people you've probably impacted as well. That's very, very, very good.
Well, I like to think that we have some impact or some effect on the people whom we've seen over the duration of the time that we're here. Yeah.
And for this the areas you study, you were saying international development studies is looking at international context. So is it morely historical, or are you also looking at it, for example, now contemporary with the COVID-19 pandemic? Are you
Both,
doing that
both,
both? Okay.
both. both. Yeah, I see myself as, on the one hand, a kind of historian of development, but obviously that lens affords me some understanding of the changing ways in which it's practiced today. And I've seen a lot of changes during this period. Of course, the history of development is a lot older and longer than me. But even in the duration of the time that I've been studying it, there have been some dramatic changes, one of which has been the mainstay of the last probably 20 years, although it goes back older than that, which is the impact of various forms of deregulation, what is often known as neoliberalism in the context of not just Africa, but throughout the global south and actually throughout the world, where the market has played a much bigger and deeper role in the societies and economies of many parts of African places that I study. So my own interest is manifold. Some have to do with ideas, some have to do with practice. On the idea level, actually, it does have to do with uh, the changing ways in which governments, civil society organizations have adapted or have adopted many of these changes. So one of the things I'm currently looking at is the way in which libertarian thought has had an impact upon the way in which institutions as large as the um, Africa Union to governments as well as people in regional institutions like the African Development Bank have played a role in changing, you might say, the mindset and therefore the practices of governments in various parts of Africa. One of my other areas is to look at the issues of the ways in which communities have been displaced by development. That's been an ongoing uh, project of mine over the last number of number of years.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. What is what has been okay? The next question is what has been your latest research? But you kind of already answered that. Do you want to add anything else, or I
Yeah,
can?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm on a research project that deals with actually issues around public health, not COVID,
Okay,
although prior to COVID, not COVID. I mean, everyone's doing COVID right now. My own view is that people, there are two parts to that. One, that um, obviously there's immediacy to it, where public health officials have to get a handle, both epidemiologically,
hmm
in terms of both surveying and trying to understand the impact of the virus in various parts of Africa. Um, the second part of that, and this is not research, this is just a point of view, is that some
okay,
things need to settle. In other words, it's not about the interventions that people need to make, but rather to try to understand over a longer period of time what the various impacts are going to be. And someone who studied the history of development, obviously it's going to be a while before we know what these things are, even though we can kind of predict some of their impacts now. But I've been working with some other colleagues across the university on some issues around Ebola, actually,
okay.
in parts of West Africa and Central Africa. So that's the other thing that I've been involved
Wow. So you're living in a pandemic and then you're studying another disease. Wow.
in. Well, one that was not so much a pandemic, it was more of a
Yeah.
regional
Yeah.
outbreak of a very, very deadly disease, although its impact is not as broad, obviously, as COVID. It's located in specific groups and populations where there's been particular kinds of outbreaks. One of them has been in an area that's been fraught with conflict, in, excuse me, in Eastern Congo. But there is some now control over this. So
That's
much
good.
of the effort was towards trying to see what local communities can do rather than international agencies and such. Yeah.
Well, good luck with all that research there. Good luck. What has been the most rewarding to you
Uh,
as a professor?
um, it's always difficult, I think, with academics because much of what we do is about our work, which can both be collaborative and singular. It's about what we what we research, what we publish, and so on. And much of that, if we're honest, we can say it really has an impact upon a very few people, right? I mean, there are those people who read what we write, there are those people whom we engage with at conferences, and they may or may not like our work. And obviously, all of us want to have some broader impact on
Yeah.
the communities, the academic and intellectual communities that we participate in. And it's rewarding when you get feedback. But our everyday life is really the life we have amongst our students at every level, whether that's the undergraduates, the undergraduate students. So many of us do supervision at the PhD, the master's level, but we also engage in every day with our students. And so if I were to earmark something that's been rewarding, I think it actually has to do with the feedback that I get from those who, over time, I probably have the largest impact on, I like to think. And in some sense, that's the students. And it's sometimes when it's not an individual, it's not a particular thing, but I think it's an aggregate, collective feedback that I get from past students whom I've had at every level, some of whom I'm still in contact with, certainly others who've gone on to have careers in the academic world, others who are people who, in everyday life, who I've retained some kind of relationship with, or some who have said that I've put them on the path of a particular pursuit that they continue to enjoy and love. And many of those have been academics, but some of them have been elsewhere. So if I had to say rewarding, it's the combination of all the things. You get these moments in class where you just know that you've hit a nerve, that you've managed to get people to enjoy something that you've tried to convey in what you know and what you learned, or the feedback that you've been given that allows you to reconvey something to students. Um, there are occasions when you're in an academic panel where there's a kind of interreaction between you and your other panelists that you enjoy. And then there's a feedback from a colleague that might write to you about something that you said or written. That's rewarding. So I think it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. But if I had to isolate a particular thing, I think it's a number of the events that I've had with various students over the years. So I would say that if it's not one particular thing, it's been really my engagement with students.
For sure, yeah. And some people, it's really interesting how one little thing I find you never may think that it would have impacted someone. I mean, there's some things you will know that they have impacted someone, but there's some things that they say, "Oh, you did this, you changed my life, or you made my day, made my week, or you made me think differently." And it's just inspiring to hear other people say that to you, and I'm sure you as well, when you never even expected it. So it's like an even better surprise.
Yeah, I
And
think you've put that well, Catherine. I think you've put that very well. I think there are, the reward can be in and of itself. That's to say, it can be just because of what you're doing. But like anyone, I think people seek or appreciate, I'd say, rather than seek, because you can take your job for granted. You can do your teaching, you can be in your office, you can be in your study, you can be in a library, you can be on a plane
yeah,
writing up some notes for a talk you're going to give. And it's all part of who you are, the persona of being the academic. But it's that immediacy that sometimes comes back through an email that you've received from someone who's gone on to do a PhD that you knew 20 years ago, that said that the class they were in an African studies class, was the foundation for them going forward to embark upon a career in
wow.
academia, or
Mhm.
one of your former students who gets a good job at a university either here or in Canada, or someone who's not working in academia who writes to you to ask you about just how you're doing. And sometimes you have to scratch your head to remember them, but then you get the context and you know who they are, and you say, "Wow, it's so nice that amongst all the students that you've engaged with, that someone can isolate you and remember you for a particular moment in the context of a classroom." So there are those, and then there, of course, there are many of your colleagues and many of the people you work with who are memorable, that provide an environment and context for you to flourish as much as you think you might be helping them to flourish. So I think there's a whole set of things as part of a career, whether you're starting out or whether you're like me, been doing this a long time. So I think the moment is ongoing, but
Hmm.
it's the particular kind of moment that I think are important, Catherine. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Very well said. Okay. This one's a long one. So I believe that the power of an education can powerfully change someone's life forever. Please describe why you think that having a post-secondary education is so foundational in one's future success.
Well, because um, I believe that um, it's an important, and it's not an easy question to answer, but I think if I were to summarize it, no, but it's an important question because
Yes,
I've
yes.
actually,
Very important.
I mean, I've seen the question and I've thought about it, but actually hearing you reiterate reminds me why it's an important question.
Hmm.
If I pause for a moment, it isn't because I didn't know what I wanted to say,
It's okay. It
but
doesn't matter.
because I know I kind of had a semi-prepared answer, but but um, but I think in the moment
Yeah,
and
for
thinking about you,
always. Yeah.
Catherine, in
Oh,
particular,
thank you.
and knowing what you do and knowing your interests, I think that I want to use a word I used before, which is that post a university education or post secondary school education should provide you with a foundation for flourishing.
Mm.
And by that, I mean that in the broader sense, not just about you being successful, but it's also about you being able to think about life, certainly about career. We have to be realistic, but I think, and to be critical, not in the sense of being critical for critical sake, but to pause, to ponder, think about what it is you are and what it is you do, and how your work in some way relates to that. And the other thing about being at university, just as it is about being at school, and it's about acknowledging that you are once again, obviously fundamentally an individual, but an individual who's socially engaged in some way. And that the education that you have, obviously, ultimately and hopefully provides you with a tool set to enable you to do the work that you eventually end up in, choose to do, and to do it well. But at the same time, that it provides you with a broader sense of how to ask certain kinds of questions, how to engage others, how to relate to others, how to assist others, and to be constantly critical in that sense, to not take things for granted, um, to not take what people tell you for granted, are able to use your education to both personally flourish, but use that also to help others flourish as well.
Yeah, yeah, that was
So,
very
I
very
mean,
good. Yeah.
I mean, my initial response to the question was going to be about, well, of course, it's going to be about, getting a good job, which of course I want everyone
Yeah, for
to
sure.
have a good living,
Yeah.
to live well, to be well. By that I mean both physically and mentally, but also to flourish in a broader sense. And by that I mean intellectually and in the relationships that people have. And it's hard because people often have education in a way that's instrumental. It's not intrinsic. It's about how I get this grade for this assignment, right? And so there's an immediacy that students want. They want to learn things, but they want to learn it for a particular end.
Mm.
And sometimes aren't able to step back and see that what they're getting is wider, broader, in some ways deeper than just that means to an end that provides you with, the end of the day, a grade. It's hard to tell people that, and particularly in the world we live today, where, as I often say, the horizons shrink in terms of the opportunities that people have. But even sometimes with the limited opportunities people have, what their education can do is provide them with a perspective on life that you would have otherwise not have been able to get. And I say that not just for people who are in the social sciences or the humanities, where people raise these issues probably more than they might do in other spheres, because even if you're in the sciences or um, uh, areas that are more technically inclined, there's still a range of courses that you have to take that provide you with to use the language of universities, a more critical inquiry about what it is you do and how you do it. Yeah.
And also these things that you learn in university, they maybe little tidbits of information here and there could help you. You never know in a situation in the future. Like I've learned stuff from elementary, high school that have helped me in my future years, different things. So everything accumulates and adds on, and it can make your life
Yeah.
better for
Yeah.
you and those around you. So it's, and having classes that you're interested as best as you, in most ways that you can. I know you have to take courses that are mandatory, but it's important, to
Mhm.
also enjoy some learning. If you don't enjoy every single class, take some classes that you enjoy, or more importantly, if you can, to try enjoy every single class. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's very important.
Well said, Catherine. Well said, indeed. Yeah. And I think that's what I was saying, and it's become a cliche of mine over many years to benefit from the intrinsic facet of education. Obviously, you can utilize that, put it to some end, but there are those aha moments in everything that we do.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's sometimes in a conversation that we have, it's sometimes when we're doing something, and sometimes, occasionally, it's in a class. Something opens up for you and allows you to see something differently. And I think any university education, irrespective of what discipline, what area it is, provides you, should provide you with um, that vista, with that pathway to seeing things differently.
yes. And our unifying question, so this is, we asked this to both college fellows and the student council members. So it is, what inspires you to study the subject field that you're currently uh, involved in?
Um, because it never ends. And, and because there are always new questions, there are always new forms of inquiry. And it gets back to that aha moment. You may feel that there are times when the area becomes stale. And academics are kind of miniature entrepreneurs, always looking for the next gig that they
Yeah.
can uh, get as a way of saying, I can do that. I can think about
Yeah.
that. I can explore that. And sometimes you think that, and there's a dead end there, or there's something that you don't find particularly inspiring. And then you'll see a footnote somewhere to something that's not necessarily something that you would immediately want to um, pursue, and it takes you in a direction, right? So there's some kind of happenstance to academic inquiry. There's an area that you look at that you become identified with in some way, but then there's something else that happens. You say, well, this might be worthy of the pursuit of stuff. So that's what I'm saying. It never ends. There's always an avenue that opens up. There's always a field that expands. Sometimes it closes because there are too many people in the field. And there's only so much to say about that area, even where you might think you might have something to say. But there's never a mode or a means or a site of inquiry that doesn't allow someone to say something. And sometimes it is just a conversation. It's not something you write, but sometimes it is. It's sometimes about what you want to actually embark upon as a side of research. And so the questions might change, but the pursuit of a set of ideas never stops. And so there is a kind of, for want of a better expression, immortality um, about inquiry that periodically just opens up and inspires. And so that's what I would say, right? And so I think most academics, in some ways, uh, are eternal students in the best sense. They want to enjoy the constant identification. There's no small amount of ego in it as well, but at the same time, uh, intrinsically, it's about, yeah, look, this one opens up, or this one opens up another idea. So you can have a conversation with a colleague, actually sometimes another discipline, without being a dilettante, their idea can spark something else that will help you
Hmm.
pursue the area that you're looking at. So, right? So in that sense, it's just the ongoingness of it that provides you with possibilities and opportunities.
So yeah, there's the aspect of helping people. Then there's, like you say, finding the answers. And I think, from what you're saying, like a little bit of a challenge. Like, can I find that? And I want to find that, and be
Mm-hmm.
able to contribute to the field. That's what do you think? Like, sort of like a challenge, kind of. Do you feel like I want to be able to
Yeah,
overcome this?
it's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge across a variety of things, because I think one of the things that academics want to, they want to impart things to students, they want to convey things to the students, but they also want to participate in discussions with their peers. Um, and those peers are often in the area, obviously, that they do research in. And so all those things, it's about the constant giving. Sounds a little bit too philanthropic, but it's the idea that you're providing, giving, sharing with students what you have and what you know, and what you might learn from them in terms of the questions they ask, right? So students push you at every level, and you take that back into your own work, as a way of seeing the horizons constantly open up with regards to re-understanding things you thought you knew, but also other ways of understanding new things as well. So it's all those things. Those things come together, I think, in a way that goes back to your previous question, right? In some ways, so it's really a privilege being an academic, um,
Oh,
because
that's great to
you
hear.
you get to have some autonomy.
Yep, I hear
You
that a
have
lot.
people looking over your shoulder from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah. You Your working hours are weird because people see you go home and they don't see you up until 10. And even in some cases, I'm my age, I can't stay up as long as I used to. But and get up in the morning and start all over again, right? Whether it's reading students' emails, reading emails from a colleague, embarking upon an idea, some of which comes off, some of which doesn't. It's constant and it's ongoing. And but I'm of the view that you can't just leave it to your place where you are in the university. It has to have some relationship to the broader context of society. A very famous person once said that, reciting someone else, philosophers have done something to the world. The point is to change it, right?
Hmm.
Ideas are just not enough. You hope that in some ways, not just your ideas, but what you do with them in some ways has some broader impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how much work it must be sometimes, because you said you look at some historical aspects, so like going through historical documents and trying to find
Yeah.
them, and then in a digital versions, probably maybe not all of them have that, so you have to look for physical copies. And kudos to you for that. Yeah, that must be a lot of
Yeah.
intense work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, indeed. And I mean, I belong to the generation, of course, where everything was in
Yeah,
what was
that's
either
right.
called microfiche, or it was, I mean, that was your digital version, or it was in hard copy form.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that were once part of an archive that was hard copy that is now digitalized, right? I don't
Hmm.
just mean that about the current thing. It's one of my own areas of pursuit to look at some historical documents on colonial development, right? And in other words, how the
Yeah.
British and French viewed colonial. Now, some of that stuff you could only go to various, you can go to London or Paris to look at these things. Now, a lot of the stuff is online, right? So there are these new modes of inquiry. You have to pay for it. Some of it's free, but some that you have to pay for it. But yeah, there are multiple ways in which you have to access the information. And you have to go to places, not just to a library, but you actually have to go to the place to interview people, to discuss things with people, and so on. So the different ways in which you inquire about that which you are looking at, and for all of us, this has, I think, been one of the big frustrations for a lot of colleagues. Is, of course, much of this involved travel, and right now no one could do that.
Yeah, that's right.
but what it's also done is it's made people aware that maybe they don't have to travel as much,
Mhm.
right? You know,
Yeah.
but all that to say, I've been the beneficiary of the privileges of being an academic that's allowed me to travel a great deal. So that's the other thing
That's
about it as
great.
well, right? I mean, yeah, most people, and hopefully all students, get to have that experience as well. If I can say this, Catherine, when COVID's over, make sure you do it now when you're young, right?
Oh, you mean like travel?
Yes, yeah,
Oh, yeah, traveling's great. Thanks to you
yeah.
for the advice. All right, well, that's all I have for today. Those are all my questions. So that was a very well said interview, inspirational. So thank you so much for joining us, and please stay safe with COVID. And thank you.
You too, yeah.
You
Well, I
go
just want
ahead.
to thank you too. I mean,
Yeah,
this has been a bore actually. It's been a gas, to use an old-fashioned term, right? And I've enjoyed it enormously. Thank you. Yeah.
you're very welcome. And thank you so much to all the professors. I say this to other professors as well for adapting so well and trying your best with this online transition. I'm myself so impressed with how things have went online and how we transferred from everything being so in person to online events and office hours and classes and
Yeah,
everything, even
indeed.
convocations now. It's really incredible. So thank you for that in that aspect as well.
Catherine, once again, thank you so much. You take care, all right? And the best to you and your families, all right?
Thank you as well. All right, bye everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Faces of Founders. On the very next episode, we will be having Professor Michelle Johnson. Always remember, know your community forges stronger unity.